No role plays, just real. Chris and Lorenzo share 4 decades of combined experience to help you become a more effective leader.
We've never really, as a workforce, spent a lot of time on making sure we're developing good leaders.
We'll be able to share stories, experience, mistakes, failures, successes.
This is Hacking Your Leadership.
Welcome to Hacking Your Leadership. I'm Chris.
And I'm Lorenzo.
And Lorenzo, on this episode, I want to talk about an article that I saw on Harvard Business Review this morning that I thought was absolutely fantastic. It's by a couple of authors, Elaine Poulakos and Robert Kaiser, and it's called Don't Let Teamwork Get in the Way of Agility. And I love the title, and it made me instantly want to read it because I have been in situations where I felt like teamwork was getting in the way of getting the job done as opposed to actually contributing to it. And so I know you've read the article too. The first thing I want to ask you is, have you ever been in a situation where you just said to yourself, there are too many kids in this tub, there are too many elbows to scrub?
I don't think I've ever used that exact terminology before.
It's a poem. It's a Shel Silverstein poem. You ever read Shel Silverstein?
Where the sidewalk ends?
Yeah, well, I think so. Or A Light in the Attic, one of those two things.
Something like that.
Too many kids in this tub. There are too many elbows to scrub. I just washed a behind that I'm sure wasn't mine. There's too many kids in this tub. And I have thought that in my head while working on some teams. On other teams, it seems to go really smoothly. I mean, what's the difference between the two?
Yeah, well, I think it's who's on the team and then how many people are on the team.
Sure.
I think when I think about my career and times where I've been in that situation, it's typically in a space where I'm forced to be on a team. Like here you're at table 6.
Yes.
And the assignment is to work at table 6.
Sure.
And here's the strategy that we want you to talk about. And then you've got all this political posturing and ideas, and everybody wants to get their part and piece in. Then you've got somebody who's trying to be the mayor of the table and make sure everybody gets to say something, and every response is like, that's a really good point, when like half of them are really bad points, but nobody actually wants to say that. So it all of a sudden, what you're trying to accomplish doesn't actually work out the way that it should work out, and then it becomes kind of a battle of who the alpha of the table is, and then that person finally takes over, and everybody else just sits back and goes like, well, just let them do it because they seem to care way more than we do about getting this done.
They don't actually care about getting it done. They just care about getting the credit for getting it done.
that as well, yes. So, yes, I've been in plenty of situations where I think that, like I said, for me, it's mostly when it's been forced, but there's also been times where, and this is what I've had to learn in my career, sometimes you want to bring more people along to say like, well, I want to include everybody, and I want to have everybody here as we have this kind of this time and this dialogue, when really it should be a much smaller amount of people that can work through the bigger picture and kind of tighten it down. And then when you include everybody, it's at the point of really getting into the tactics of how you do it, where they can be much more helpful in that space. And I've had to learn that lesson because I'm an includer. Like it's literally my top number one strength-based organization theme, so I want to bring everybody in, but I've had to learn to limit that over time and only really bringing those people to the meeting or to the team that are really, really important to the mission at hand or this piece of the strategy that has to happen.
Yeah, I agree with that. I've told this story on the podcast before about being in situations where a team leader had what I call crippling empathy, inclusion for the sake of inclusion. And I don't get me wrong, not bad people, and the motivation behind it was 100% righteous and solid. But I've been in situations where a meeting was canceled and rescheduled an hour before because one out of the 6 people that was scheduled just all of a sudden couldn't make it. And instead of just having the meeting with the 5 people and catching that one person up, it was rescheduled. And at that point, it becomes, we're not even getting the work done now. And that's an extreme example, but it happens across the workforce. It happens in a lot of places. And it's one thing if the person that it cancels or has to reschedule is the one orchestrating the meeting. Yeah, I get there's situations like that. But the idea of we can't move forward until we can all move forward together, there are very few situations where that is the case. But I'll tell you something, the more streamlined the teams are, the more likely it is that those decisions will be made correctly, and the less likely it's going to happen. If one person out of 30 can't make it, at that point, do you not move forward? At what point does it become, all right, this is ridiculous, we have to get the work done? The other thing that made me think of is there's a mug that I bought for a coworker many years ago that I always thought was funny. It says, "I just survived another meeting that could have been an email." And to me, this article is fantastic in that it makes me think of the amount of times we include people in things at the wrong time, meaning they should be a part of the process, but it doesn't mean that all 50 people have to be involved from the starting pistol. Sometimes you start with less people and you bring people along for the journey as time goes on.
Yeah, no, I completely agree, and I think that it's to truly be as efficient as possible and as effective as possible. I think that honestly, that's the only way to do it. Is that you start to bring along people, you add to the party as the motion gets going. And again, my background being a DJ, if I went around the room of 150 people and I wanted to make sure that I played, one song for each of you, then it's going to be a bad party because literally nothing's going to flow, nothing's going to feel right. But I'm going to feel like, well, this felt like the right thing to do because everybody got their one song versus thinking about how do I curate a playlist or how do I take the vibe of what's going on here and do what I need to do. And then where I can sprinkle in the people or the songs or the, the thoughts or the advice as I go, it makes it a lot more impactful and a lot more effective. And I think that's the case a lot of times. And again, as you were talking about your example, I thought you were talking about me for a second there, because I am guilty as charged. It's one of the things that like I said, I've really learned in my career that just because you want to include people, you have to learn when to include them. Because again, you can bring the wrong person into the beginning of a strategy session that really has no business being in there. And maybe they're not even comfortable. They've never done it before. They don't have the context necessary to really work on this thing. And not only have you maybe slowed the team down, but then you've kind of alienated them and made them feel bad because now they're like, I don't even think I belong here, let alone will my idea be good or bad? And so understanding that just the act of inclusion or just kind of, bringing the whole team together for everything doesn't equal that we're working well as a team, and it does slow us down and it does make us less agile and flexible because now we're dealing with all these other dynamics of people and personalities and perspectives that may be a problem, and that could derail us completely from what we're trying to accomplish.
Yeah, I agree. And I love your DJ example because I'm sure you've been in rooms where you've been told by the host of the party that 100 people are expected. And so you don't sit up there on your table going, I only see 40 people. I'm not going to start playing yet. We're going to wait till 100 are here. That'd be a really terrible party until all 100 people arrive.
Right. It would never make it to 100 because the 40 people would be texting them saying, don't come here, the DJ is whack and he's not playing any music.
Exactly right. Sometimes a crowd draws a crowd. And I think it's a dance that a lot of leaders have to do here because on the one hand, there is an element of, I was a ground floor person. There are some people who have an aversion to getting involved, or they're kind of hands-offish on getting involved if they feel like the train has already left the station and they can't get caught up. And there are other people who kind of feel like, I don't want to come to this party until I know there is a party. I don't want to be the only one standing there until things are up and running. So I think it's incumbent upon leaders to know who their people are and what drives them, and to know which people are more likely to make a great contribution if they're a ground floor person, which people are more likely to make a great contribution if they can see the momentum going on and they want to jump in. I know personally speaking, I'm a momentum person. I'm not a ground floor person. I want to see what's going on, and I feel like I can tweak things and add things, but the whole we're going to sit in this room and start from scratch, I get less out of that than I get from jumping into a party that's already going on. And I don't represent everybody. There are other people like me, and there are some people who are like, I'm not in unless I'm in on day one.
Yeah, and I think too, it's, if you are a leader of leaders and you've got multiple people with the same maybe title that you work with or report to you, the temptation can be that you want to include everybody and everything. And what tends to happen sometimes is that people on your team and what strengths they have. And to your point, to your example, who's going to come into this part of what we're doing and add value and get, and get energy from it and enjoy it and kind of help push it down the tracks. And who's going to come in potentially and either distract us or detract from what we're doing, or it's not something that they're interested in. But as a leader of multiple leaders like that, you have to be really kind of transparent and clear with everybody that that's what you did for that reason. That you say, look, hey, I want you all to know that I've been working with Chris on this thing, last couple of days. And the reason why I selected Chris is because it's something that he's really, really good at. And I needed to leverage him for that. So now that we feel that we've got we're in a great spot right now, we've kind of, accomplished some of these things that we were working on. Now we want to continue to bring all of you along. Versus why does Chris always get to do that? Or how come he didn't call me? Or why didn't we talk about, right? You have to tell them. And then also also, when you utilize people like that, you also need to let them know that that's what you're doing at the onset, and say like, look, hey, I'm calling you. This is something that all of us have to do as a team, but I'm asking you first because I know that this is something that you are either passionate about, you're really good at, you can help me to work through and refine this, and as you and I feel good about this, we will then roll it out to everybody else. So that way, if you're prefacing those conversations with your team in that way, they all understand that if it wasn't them this time, it might be them next time. And it's not a personal thing, it's not a favorite thing, it's simply leveraging your people for the natural skills that they have to accomplish the goal.
I completely agree with that, and I love that, because sometimes it's important to some people to get credit. Not all the credit. They don't want to be the one on the pedestal, but they also don't want to feel like they were just a cog to help someone else get some accolades. And so if you reach out to me first and say, you're going to have me do this, and then you're transparent to the rest of the team, oh, here's why we brought Chris in first and started this process, but now we're all going to move along. I think it becomes really important for that leader to make known that this isn't now you're going to help Chris get credit for things. This is something we're all working towards together. I'm utilizing strengths where I see strengths, but at the end of the day, we are a team, and we will get credit for this as a team. And I think why this is important is because I have seen so many teams that aren't actually teams. So we talk about teamwork. Teamwork in itself implies a shared outcome, an outcome that is shared, either positive or negative, that the team gets to own. And so there are so many places around the workforce where we talk about team goals and team outcomes, but yet all of the metrics are individual metrics. Lorenzo, how did you do on this? Chris, how did you do on this? Bob, how did you do on this? Oh, now it's a team. No, it's not. Just because you're doing the same work doesn't make you a team. You're only a team when there is pure accountability among the team. And so if you as a leader are taking steps to remove that pure accountability, if you're taking steps to make sure that Lorenzo and Chris and Bob and Jennifer and Mary don't know what each other is doing, where they're succeeding, where they're failing, how well they're doing at this element, and how not well they're doing at this element, if you're kind of hiding all that and judging each person individually, but then stepping back and talking about a team goal, you've already lost. A team goal implies that Lorenzo and Chris and Bob and Mary and Jennifer all get to look at each other's work and performance and say, hey, let me help you where I see you struggling, and you can help me where I'm struggling. Because other than that, you're just calling it a team because it sounds better, but you're really talking about individual outcomes.
Yeah, and I think too, individual outcomes, can be a part of the plan as long as everybody's aware that they all layer into a bigger picture. So as an example, right, there's a popular fashion apparel store, I won't say their name on here, that I never worked for, but I had been aware of, that they had people that simply work there and their job was to stand around all day and look good. Then they had people that worked there and their job was to bring product out, fold it up, make sure that it was appealing to the customers, right? And then they had some people that were in there as well, and their responsibility 100% was to engage with customers and ring things up. And so when they would go over some of these individual, contributions or results, it was always celebrating the people who would sell things, and then they would celebrate the people that were like just they were just paid to stand around and look good. But they would all, like, even the name of the different teams was such that, like, you almost felt bad for the people that were out there making sure the product was out, everything was good, and it was all organized. But at the end of the day, like, they weren't approaching it as we are all a team. And everybody has these different skill sets, and we have to celebrate together, because if this team doesn't bring the stuff out, set it up, make it look good, and it's always available, you don't have anything to sell.
Right.
And if this team over here isn't out as the face of our brand, engaging people, trying to inspire them to want to own these clothes, then nobody comes in for you to talk to sell them things. So it's like, even in that mode where those roles were so different, and even by title and just the way they were set up, if the leader treats people individually that way, they don't think about this as helping them paint the picture for the bigger team, that you never actually have a team, and you never get the ability for them to be highly effective. I know that's different than like teamwork, in limiting, like agility and effectiveness. But I think it falls all in the same place there in regards to how you as a leader engage a larger team. To your point, it's not just saying we're a team, but treating them as such.
Don't lie. Were you one of the people that was paid to stand around and look good? Was that your job in a previous role?
Look,
here?
I was a holiday hire. It was
Sure.
for 3 months.
Sure.
And I couldn't take all the pictures, so I left.
Yeah, I get it. Yeah. I love that. In fact, it reminds me of one of our guest interviews from about a month and a half ago. Is with Nick Gallo. And check out the whole interview if you haven't yet, because it's fantastic. And we talked extensively around one of the trends that we'd love to see go away is this idea of cost centers and profit centers, and how, there's this divide between the people who bring in the sales and everybody else, almost like, they're not important because they don't generate any revenue. It's like, well, how much revenue could you generate if it weren't for all the people that support you in these roles? And that's the quickest way to alienate people who you need to run your business, is to find some hierarchy to say that this role is more important than this role. It shouldn't exist. And if a good leader understands that each role is needed, and you put people in roles that match their strengths.
Absolutely. And with that, it brings us to this episode's 1 Minute Hack.
The 1 Minute Hack.
All right, for this episode's 1 Minute Hack, I want to reference a couple of things from this HBR article from Elaine and Robert on what leaders' roles are in this process of making sure that teamwork is effective and you're not sacrificing the job for the element of team. The first thing is you have to have a culture of allowing people to opt out, to actually say no to getting involved. And this is much easier said than done because people feel like everything's a test. You give them the option to say no, and they're thinking to themselves, well, wait, should I say no? I go back to thinking about when I would ask my dad if I could go out at night, and he'd say, yeah, do what you want to do. And then knowing that, I could go, that means I could technically go out, but is he judging me for making the wrong and immature decision for doing something? And so you got to make sure that when you put your team members in these places, that they understand that there is no test here. They're actually giving you the opportunity to say no based on whether or not they think they can contribute. And the second thing leaders need to do is make sure that they're constantly looking at the size of the team working together and reevaluating whether or not it is too large or there are too many people involved. The words from the article are, if there's room on a team for people to be lazy and not contribute, then there are too many people on the team and the number should be reduced. So leaders, you should not think to yourself, well, I've already brought this person involved, now they're in it for the long haul. It's okay to rejudge and resize a team as a project goes on.
Absolutely. I think it's a great 1 minute hack, and I think that it's imperative that as you're considering the strategies and how you bring people along, that you're thinking about these questions and you're reflecting upon who is a part of that team. If you're looking to just be as effective as possible, I think that it's something that we all have to do. As I shared many times on the show, like, it's a struggle that I've had over my career. I think that I've gotten much better at it, especially when I step back and I think about, am I doing this for the sake of bringing people along, or am I doing this to be as effective as possible? And usually when I have to ask myself that question, it helps for me to make that decision.
Yeah, totally. There's an old adage, when it's everyone's job, it's no one's job. So the importance of defining clear roles and clear jobs is absolutely there. We will link to this article in the podcast description. It's only about a 5-minute read. It's definitely worth reading.
Absolutely. And with that, it brings us to the end of this episode. This is Hacking Your Leadership. I'm Lorenzo.
And I'm Chris.
And we'll talk to you all next time.